The crystalline spires of the Galaxy Council headquarters stretched toward the artificial sky, their surfaces reflecting the light of a dozen different suns. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the viewing platform of the human embassy, watching the endless stream of alien vessels arriving and departing from a massive space station. 3 years she had served here. 3 years of careful diplomacy and measured words, building bridges between Earth and the 1,000 worlds that comprise the galactic community. Today, those bridges would burn. The data pad in her hand contained information that would change everything. Intercepted communications, financial records, biological surveys of Earth that went far beyond what any trade agreement required. The Galaxy Council hadn't welcomed humanity as partners. They had been studying them, cataloging their strengths and weaknesses, preparing for something far more sinister than Elena had ever imagined. Her aide, Marcus Chen, approached with quick steps. His face was pale, sweat beading on his forehead despite the climate-controlled environment. Ambassador, the council session begins in 20 minutes. The Zephyrian delegation is asking if you will be presenting the mineral right proposal as scheduled. Elena turned away from the window, her dark eyes hard with resolve. No, Marcus, we won't be discussing mineral rights today. She held up the datapad. We'll be discussing this. Marcus glanced at the device, confusion crossing his features. I don't understand. The agenda was confirmed weeks ago. Earth's expansion into the Kepler sector depends on. Earth's survival depends on what I'm about to do. Elena's voice carried a weight that made Marcus step back. The mineral right proposal was never about giving us access to new worlds, Marcus. It was about giving them access to ours. The data pad displayed a holographic projection as Elena activated it. Star chart appeared, showing Earth's solar system surrounded by tactical markers and fleet positions. Biological data scrolled past, detailing human physiology, reproductive rates, and something that made Elena's blood run cold, compatibility assessments for forced labor operations. My God, Marcus whispered. How long had they been planning this? Since first contact. Elena's fingers trembled as she navigated through the files. The trade agreements, the technology exchanges, the cultural missions, it was all a pretext. They'd been mapping our defenses, studying our capabilities, waiting for the right moment to strike. The communication system chimed, and a melodious voice filled the embassy. Ambassador Vasquez, please report to Council Chamber 1 for the scheduled session. The assembly awaits your presence. Elena looked at her reflection in the darkened window. At Fortitude, she had dedicated her life to diplomacy, believing that understanding and cooperation could bridge any gap between species. The woman staring back at her now carried the weight of humanity's future, and the terrible knowledge that everything she had worked for was built on lies. Marcus sent an immediate transmission to Earth. Priority Alpha. Tell them to activate the Prometheus Protocol. Marcus's eyes widened. The Prometheus Protocol was humanity's most closely guarded secret, a defensive measure that only a handful of people knew existed. Ambassador, if we activate Prometheus, there's no going back. It will be seen as an act of war. They are already at war with us, Elena replied, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to do. They just haven't told us yet. The walk to Council Chamber 1 felt like a funeral march. The corridors of the Galaxy Council Station were works of art, their walls displaying the history of 1,000 civilizations united in peace and prosperity. Elena had once found inspiration in these displays. Now she saw them for what they truly were, monuments to conquest disguised as cultural celebration. The chamber doors opened with a soft hiss, revealing the vast amphitheater where representatives from across the galaxy gathered. The Zephyrian High Counselor, Veltar, presided from the central dais, his multiple eyes tracking Elena's entrance. Around him, delegates from dozens of species watched with expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed contempt. Ambassador Vasquez, Veltar's voice resonated through translation devices, carrying undertones that human ears couldn't detect but that Elena had learned to recognize as condescension. We are eager to hear your presentation on the Kepler sector mineral rights. Elena walked to the center of the chamber, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. She placed a datapad on the speaker's podium and looked up at the assembled delegates. Many of them already knew what she had discovered. She could see it in their postures, the way certain species clustered together, the nervous energy that filled the chamber. "Honored delegates," Elena began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "I stand before you today not to discuss mineral rights, but to discuss something far more precious, truth." A murmur ran through the assembly. Veltar's primary eyes narrowed, while his secondary organs focused on the datapad. "Ambassador, please adhere to the scheduled agenda. There will be time for philosophical discussions during the cultural exchange period." "There will be no cultural exchange," Elena said, her voice growing stronger. "There will be no mineral rights negotiation. There will be no further cooperation between Oath and this council." She activated the datapad, and the holographic display filled the chamber with images of Earth surrounded by council fleet positions. The reaction was immediate and telling. Some delegates recoiled in genuine shock, their faces reflecting horror at the displayed plans. Others remained perfectly still, their expressions carefully neutral. The guilty parties had revealed themselves through their lack of surprise. "What you see before you," Elena continued, "is evidence of a conspiracy that reaches to the highest levels of this council. For 3 years, while I participated in good faith in this alliance, you have been preparing to invade our world, enslave our people, and strip our planet of its resources." Veltar's voice boomed through the chamber. "These are serious accusations. Ambassador, I trust you have proof of these wild claims." Elena smiled grimly. "I have more than proof, High Counselor. I have your own communications." The chamber erupted into chaos as Elena began reading from the intercepted messages, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade through silk. The intercepted communications painted a picture of galactic politics that would have been unthinkable to Elena just hours earlier. As she read from the files, delegates throughout the chamber began shouting, some in outrage at the revelations, others attempting to discredit her evidence. But the data was undeniable. Shipping manifests for slave transport vessels, biological weapons designed specifically for human physiology, and worst of all, detailed plans for the systematic destruction of Earth's military capabilities. The Terran defense grid presents minimal threat to Council forces. Elena read from a tactical assessment bearing Veltar's personal seal. Human emotional attachments to their offspring create exploitable weaknesses. Recommend capture and relocation of juvenile populations to ensure compliance. The Altarian delegate, a crystalline being whose species Elena had considered among humanity's closest allies, stood abruptly. "High Counselor, I demand an immediate investigation into these allegations. The Altarian Confederacy was never informed of any military action against Oath." Veltar's multiple eyes swiveled to focus on the Altarian. "Delegate Crescene, please contain your outburst. These documents could easily be fabricated. Humans are known for their deceptive capabilities." "Then let's verify their authenticity," Elena said, her voice carrying across the now silent chamber. She pulled out a secondary device, one that Marcus had provided from their intelligence division. "This is a quantum-encrypted communication relay, linked directly to the Council's own security network. Shall we access your private files together, High Counselor?" The color drained from Veltar's translucent skin. Around the chamber, Elena could see the conspiracy beginning to unravel. The hegemony delegates, the militant faction that had always pushed for aggressive expansion, were already moving toward the exits. The more peaceful species were staring at their supposed allies with growing horror. "Security!" Veltar's voice cracked with desperation. "Arrest the human ambassador for espionage and conspiracy against the Council." But the security forces hesitated. Elena could see the confusion in their movements, the way they looked between their orders and the evidence displayed throughout the chamber. Many of them came from species that valued honor and truth above political convenience. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," Elena said calmly. She touched the control on her wrist communicator. "You see, High Counselor, while you were planning to invade Earth, we were planning for this moment." The main display screen flickered and changed, showing the space around the Council station. Where once there had been routine traffic and patrol vessels, now massive shapes emerged from seemingly empty space. Human dreadnoughts, their hulls black as void, materialized from stealth fields that should have been impossible with known technology. "Allow me to introduce the Earth Defense Fleet," Elena announced as gasps echoed through the chamber. "Did you really think we would join a galactic community without preparing for the possibility of betrayal?" The ships were beautiful in their terrifying simplicity. No decorative elements, no cultural artifact displayed on their hulls. They were tools of war, designed by a species that had learned through bitter experience that peace could only be maintained through strength. Their weapons remained powered down, but their very presence sent a clear message. Admiral Sarah Chen's voice filled the chamber through Elena's communicator. Council Station, this is Admiral Chen of the Earth Defense Fleet. You are surrounded by 47 vessels of the line. Any attempt to harm Ambassador Vasquez or interfere with her departure will be met with immediate and overwhelming force. Veltar stumbled backward, his multiple eyes wide with terror. This is an act of war. You're attacking a neutral station. We're not attacking anyone, Elena replied. We're leaving. Earth hereby withdraws from the Galaxy Council, effective immediately. All treaties, trade agreements, and diplomatic protocols are null and void. The Drakmari delegate, a reptilian warrior whose species Elena had always respected for their directness, rose from his seat. Ambassador Vasquez, if these accusations are true, the Drakmari Empire stands with Earth. We do not tolerate treachery among allies. Similar declarations began echoing through the chamber as the revelation of the conspiracy spread. Species after species announced their intention to investigate the allegations, and several declared immediate suspension of their council membership pending a full inquiry. You're destroying everything. Veltar screamed, his composure finally cracking completely. The council has maintained peace for 3,000 years. Without us, the galaxy will tear itself apart. Elena gathered her datapad and moved toward the chamber exit, her stride confident despite the chaos erupting around her. High Counselor, you destroyed the Council the moment you decided that conquest was more important than cooperation. We're just making it official. As she reached the exit, Elena turned back to address the chamber one final time. To those species who truly believe in peace and cooperation, know that Earth's door remains open. But we will never again submit to the authority of those who see us as resources to be exploited rather than partners to be respected. The corridor outside the chamber was filled with fleeing delegates and panicked staff members. Elena's security detail, led by Captain Rodriguez of Earth's Diplomatic Protection Service, formed up around her as they moved toward the docking bay where the human shuttle waited. Rodriguez reported through his helmet communicator. We're receiving multiple requests for asylum from Council Station personnel. Several dozen individuals from various species want to accompany us when we leave. Elena wasn't surprised. The Galaxy Council's carefully maintained facade of unity had cracked, and now the rot underneath was visible to all. Grant asylum to anyone who requests it. Captain, they are witnesses to what really happened here. The shuttle bay was a scene of controlled chaos. Human personnel were evacuating non-essential equipment while preparing for immediate departure. Elena could see families of diplomats and trade officials boarding transport vessels, their faces reflecting the same shock she felt at learning the truth about their galactic neighbors. Marcus approached her with a communication pad. Ambassador, we're receiving priority transmission from Earth. President Morrison wants to speak with you directly. Elena took the pad and activated the secure channel. President Morrison's face appeared, his expression grim but determined. Elena, the Prometheus protocol is active. Our defense fleets are moving to secure positions throughout human space. What's the situation there? The conspiracy goes deeper than we thought, Mr. President. But the Council is fracturing. Several species are declaring support for our position, and others are demanding investigations. The hegemony faction is exposed, and they are panicking. Morrison nodded. Good. Dr. Peterson's team wants to brief you on some additional capabilities we've kept hidden. Things that might surprise even our new enemies. Elena felt a chill of anticipation. Throughout her diplomatic career, she had always wondered what secrets Earth's military held in reserve. It seemed she was about to find out. One more thing, Elena, Morrison continued. The Joint Chiefs want to know, are you prepared to see this through to the end? Because once we reveal what humanity is truly capable of, there's no going back to the old ways. Elena looked out through the shuttle bay's viewing port at the assembled Earth Defense Fleet. Each ship represented thousands of lives, men and women who had volunteered to stand between humanity and those who would enslave them. The weight of their trust, and the trust of 8 billion people on Earth, settled on her shoulders. Mr. President, she said, her voice steady and clear. "It's time the galaxy learned what happens when you threaten humanity's children." The journey back to Earth took 3 days through the hyperspace lanes, but Elena spent most of that time in secure communications with military commanders and intelligent officials she had never known existed. The Prometheus Protocol, she learned, was far more than a defensive measure. It was a revelation of humanity's true capabilities, hidden behind decades of careful misdirection and strategic weakness. Dr. Elizabeth Peterson, the director of Earth's Advanced Research Division, appeared on the shuttle's main screen as they approached the Sol system. Her gray hair was pulled back severely, and her eyes held the intensity of someone who had spent years preparing for this moment. "Ambassador Vasquez, what you're about to see will change your understanding of humanity's place in the galaxy," Dr. Peterson began. "For 30 years, since first contact, we've been conducting a massive deception operation. Every technology we've shared with the Council, every capability we've demonstrated, has been carefully calculated to make us appear less advanced than we actually are." Elena stared at the screen in amazement. "You're telling me we've been lying to the entire galaxy about our technological level?" "Not lying," Dr. Peterson corrected. "Protecting ourselves. When the Centauri delegation first arrived, our best minds realized immediately that we were entering a community of predators. The Council's history, their expansion patterns, their treatment of newly contacted species, it all pointed to a system designed to identify and exploit the weak." The shuttle's viewport showed Earth growing larger ahead of them, but Elena could see that something was different. Structures that hadn't been there when she left were now visible in orbit, massive installations that dwarf the known defense platforms. "What are those?" Elena asked, pointing to the new constructions. "Orbital manufacturing facilities," Dr. Peterson replied with a slight smile. "We've been building them in stealth mode for the past 2 years. When the Council scouts surveyed our system, they saw exactly what we wanted them to see, a moderately advanced civilization with basic space capabilities. They never detected the real infrastructure." As the shuttle approached Earth's orbital traffic control zone, Elena began to understand the true scope of humanity's deception. Ships she had never seen before moved through the orbital lanes, sleek vessels that made the Council's supposedly advanced technology look primitive by comparison. Workers in powered suits moved with a grace that suggested artificial enhancement, manipulating materials that seemed to bend and flow like liquid metal. Captain Rodriguez joined Elena at the viewport, his expression reflecting her own awe. "I've been in the Diplomatic Protection Service for 15 years, and I had no idea any of this existed." "That was the point," Dr. Peterson said from the screen. "The fewer people who knew the truth, the better we could maintain the deception. Even most of our own government officials believed we were exactly as advanced as we appeared to be." The shuttle docked at a facility Elena didn't recognize, a massive structure that extended deep into Earth's orbital infrastructure. As they disembarked, she was met by Admiral Chen, whose presence here rather than with the fleet surprised her. "Admiral, I thought you were maintaining position around the Council station." "That's Admiral Chen's sister, Sarah." Admiral Chen replied with a grin that looked remarkably similar to her twins. "I'm Rebecca Chen, Director of Special Operations. Sarah gets all the glory commanding fleets, but I handle the interesting projects." Elena felt as though the ground was shifting beneath her feet. "How many secrets has Earth been keeping?" "All of them," Admiral Chen replied. "Follow me. There are some people you need to meet." They moved through corridors that seemed to pulse with energy, past laboratories where scientists worked with technologies that defied Elena's understanding. In one chamber, she saw what appeared to be a miniature star contained within a magnetic field. In another, researchers were manipulating the fundamental structure of space-time itself. The Council believes they are dealing with a species that discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago, Admiral Chen explained as they walked. "In reality, we've had FTL capability for over a century. We've been to other galaxies. Elena, we've seen civilizations that make the Council look like children playing with sticks." They entered a vast chamber where a holographic display showed the entire galaxy. Red markers indicated Council territories, while blue markers showed something Elena had never seen on any official chart: human settlements scattered throughout the galaxy, hidden installations that have been operating in secret for decades. "We've been watching them," Admiral Chen continued. "Every species in the Council, every political faction, every military capability. We knew about their plans for Earth before they finalized them. We've been 3 steps ahead of them for years." A familiar voice spoke from behind Elena. "The question now is what we do with that advantage." Elena turned to see President Morrison approaching, but he wasn't alone. With him walked individuals she recognized from history books, scientists and military leaders who were supposed to be dead, their deaths carefully staged to hide humanity's most important assets. "Dr. Harrison," Elena breathed, recognizing the physicist whose revolutionary work on space-time manipulation had allegedly killed him in a laboratory accident 5 years earlier. "You're supposed to be dead." "Death is an excellent cover for sensitive research," Dr. Harrison replied with a wry smile. "It's amazing how much work you can accomplish when the entire galaxy thinks you don't exist." President Morrison gestured to the holographic display. "Elena, what you accomplished at the council station was the easy part. You revealed their conspiracy and gave us moral justification for what comes next. But now we have to decide whether we want to simply defend ourselves or reshape the entire galactic order." The weight of the decision hung in the air like a physical presence. Elena looked around the chamber at the assembled leaders, scientists, and military officers who had been preparing for this moment for decades. Each face reflected the same question: how far was humanity willing to go to protect itself and its values? "What are our options?" Elena asked. Admiral Chen manipulated the holographic display, showing fleet movements throughout the galaxy. "Option 1. We withdraw completely. Seal our borders, defend our territory, and let the Council collapse or reform without our involvement. Safe, but ultimately passive." The display shifted, showing different scenarios. Option 2. We selectively intervene. Support the species that oppose a conspiracy. Help them build a new galactic order based on actual cooperation rather than exploitation. And Option 3. Elena asked, though she suspected she already knew. Option 3. President Morrison said quietly, is that we take direct control. We have the technology, the intelligence assets, and now the moral authority to restructure galactic civilization according to human principles. Democracy, individual rights, actual freedom, concepts most of these species have never experienced. Elena stared at the display, watching the complex dance of political and military forces across thousands of light years. The little girl inside her who had once dreamed of exploring the stars had never imagined it would come to this, humanity standing at a crossroads that would determine the fate of trillions of sentient beings. "There's something else you need to know," Dr. Peterson interjected. "The Council's conspiracy against Earth wasn't their first. We've identified at least 12 other species that were targeted for integration over the past century. Most of them no longer exist as independent civilizations." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. This wasn't just about Earth's survival. It was about justice for countless other species that had been destroyed by the Council's systematic exploitation. Elena looked at President Morrison. "Mr. President, I need to know exactly what humanity is capable of. Before I can recommend a course of action, I need to understand what tools we have at our disposal." Morrison nodded to Admiral Chen, who activated a new section of the holographic display. What Elena saw there made her question everything she thought she knew about physics, warfare, and the very nature of reality itself. "Elena," Morrison said softly, "what you're about to learn will make you one of only 50 people in human history who know the full extent of our capabilities. Are you prepared for that responsibility?" Elena thought of the families being loaded into slave ships in the Council secret files, of the species that had been erased from existence by the same organization that had pretended to welcome humanity with open arms. The weight of 8 billion human lives and trillions more potential victims pressed down on her shoulders. "Yes, Mr. President. Show me what we can do." The revelation of humanity's true capabilities left Elena speechless for nearly 10 minutes. The holographic display showed technologies that seemed to violate the fundamental laws of physics, ships that could manipulate gravity wells, weapons that could destabilize stars, and most shocking of all, evidence that humans had developed limited-time manipulation technology. "The Temporal Research Division has been operating for 25 years, Dr. Harrison explained, his voice carrying the weight of decades of hidden wealth. "We can't travel through time, but we can observe it. We watch the Council's crimes unfold across centuries. Elena, we know about every species they destroyed, every civilization they corrupted." Admiral Chen manipulated the display to show a timeline stretching back 300 years. The Kalani Federation, wiped out in 2384. The Vrex Commonwealth, absorbed in 2401. The Thylaurian Empire, broken apart in 2445. 18 major civilizations destroyed or enslaved, and hundreds of minor species eliminated entirely. Elena felt sick, and the other council members just allowed this. Most of them don't know, President Morrison replied. The hegemony faction has been very careful about information control. They present each conquest as a necessary response to aggression or as humanitarian intervention. The peaceful species in the council genuinely believe they are part of a benevolent organization. Dr. Peterson stepped forward, her expression grim. But now they are going to learn the truth, whether they want to or not. The data you release at the council station is spreading throughout their networks. Within days, every species in the galaxy will know about conspiracy against Earth. Which brings us to the decision point, Admiral Chen said. We can't put this knowledge back in the bottle. The galaxy is about to tear itself apart as the truth spreads. The question is whether we guide that process or simply watch it happen. Elena studied the holographic display, watching the complex web of relationships between thousands of species across the galaxy. Some had been oppressors, others victims, and many were simply caught in the middle of forces beyond their understanding. What would direct intervention look like? She asked. Admiral Chen smiled grimly. We have asset positioned throughout council space. Ships, personnel, intelligence networks that have been building for decades. We could simultaneously strike at every hegemony installation, liberate their prison worlds, and present the galaxy with evidence of their crimes that no one could deny. And the costs? Minimal for us, Dr. Harrison replied. Our technology is centuries ahead of anything the Council possesses. Their weapons can't penetrate our shields, their ships can't outrun ours, and their communications can't hide from our surveillance networks. Elena felt a chill. I wasn't asking about material costs, Doctor. I was asking about moral ones. If we do this, we become exactly what we're fighting against, a powerful force imposing our will on the galaxy. The chamber fell silent. It was President Morrison who finally spoke. Elena, that's exactly why we need you to make this decision. You're the one person who has seen both sides, the diplomat who believed in cooperation, and the witness who discovered the truth about predators wearing the mask of civilization. A communication alert chimed through the chamber. Admiral Chen activated the incoming signal, and the face of Captain Sarah Chen appeared on the screen. Her expression was urgent. Command, we have a situation developing at the council station. The hegemony faction has declared martial law and is attempting to arrest delegates from species that supported Earth's position. The Drakmari Empire has responded by deploying their battle fleet. We're looking at potential shooting war within hours. Elena felt the weight of decision pressing down on her. While they debated philosophy and strategy, real beings were about to die because of action she had set in motion. Sarah, what's the status of our asylum seekers? Elena asked. Safely aboard our ships. But I'm receiving hundreds more requests from station personnel who want to leave before the fighting starts. And Elena, we're picking up communication intercept that suggests the hegemony is preparing to implement something called the Final Solution Protocol. Dr. Peterson's face went pale. They are going to sterilize Earth. Elena stayed at the screen. What? It's in the classified files we intercepted, Dr. Peterson explained rapidly. If their conquest plan failed, they had a backup strategy. Biological weapons designed to eliminate human life while leaving the planet's resources intact. They have ships moving towards Sol right now. The chamber erupted into activity as officers began issuing orders and scientists called up tactical displays. But Elena's focus narrowed to a single, crystal-clear realization. The choice had been taken away from them. This was no longer about reshaping galactic civilization or maintaining moral high ground. This was about survival. Mr. President, Elena said, her voice cutting through the chaos, I recommend immediate implementation of Option 3. Morrison looked at her intently. You understand what that means. It means we save everyone we can and let history judge whether we were right. Elena turned to Admiral Chen. How quickly can we move? Every asset is already in position, Admiral Chen replied. We've been preparing for this contingency for years. Say the word, and we can begin operations immediately. Elena looked one last time at the holographic display showing the galaxy in all its complexity and beauty. Somewhere out there, on thousands of worlds, beings were living their lives unaware that their entire civilization was about to change forever. Some would welcome that change. Others would fight it. But if humanity did nothing, many of them would simply die. Admiral Chen, you have authorization to proceed. Initiate Operation Prometheus. The next few hours passed in a blur of activity as Elena watched humanity reveal its true nature to the galaxy. Ships that had been hidden in stealth fields for decades suddenly appeared throughout Council space. Installations that the hegemony had thought secure found themselves surrounded by human forces that seemed to materialize from thin air. But it wasn't the display of military might that impressed Elena most. It was a precision with which human forces moved to protect the innocent. On world after world, human troops arrived not as conquerors but as liberators, freeing beings who had been enslaved for generations and presenting them with evidence of their oppressors' crimes. Ambassador, Captain Rodriguez reported, "We're receiving surrender requests from hegemony commanders across 17 sectors. They are claiming they were following orders and requesting mercy." Elena thought of the files she had read, of the species that had been erased from existence by those same commanders. Tell them that mercy is a human concept they should have learned about before they decided to threaten our children. As reports continued to flow in from across the galaxy, Elena realized that humanity had won more than a military victory. They had shattered the illusion that had held galactic civilization together for millennia, the belief that power and cooperation could coexist when power was held by those who saw other beings as resources rather than people. "Elena," President Morrison said quietly, "in 6 hours, you'll need to address the galaxy. Every species, every world, every surviving leader will be listening. What are you going to tell them?" Elena looked out through the chamber's viewing port at the stars beyond Earth's atmosphere. Each point of light represented worlds full of beings who were about to learn that their universe had changed forever. "I'm going to tell them the truth, Mr. President. All of it. And then I'm going to offer them something the Galaxy Council never did, a real choice about their future." The galactic communication array that Elena stood before could reach every inhabited world in the galaxy simultaneously. As she prepared to address trillions of beings, she felt the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. Behind her, representatives from 4 to 7 species that had requested immediate alliance with Earth watched silently, their faces reflecting a mixture of hope and fear. "Citizens of the galaxy," Elena began, her voice being translated into thousands of languages across the stars. 6 hours ago, humanity revealed capabilities that we have kept hidden for decades. This was not a choice we made lightly, nor was it one we made from ambition. We acted because we discovered that the Galaxy Council, the organization that promised peace and cooperation among all species, were preparing to enslave or destroy every free civilization in the galaxy. The holographic displays throughout the chamber showed real-time reactions from across the galaxy. Some worlds erupted in celebration as populations that had lived under council oppression for generations realized they were free. Others showed confusion and fear as beings struggled to understand how their reality had changed so suddenly. For 3 centuries, the Galaxy Council has maintained power through a carefully constructed lie, Elena continued. They told you that cooperation required submission, that peace demanded the surrender of independence, that prosperity could only come through hierarchy and control. Today, humanity offers you a different vision, one where cooperation is voluntary, peace is built on mutual respect, and prosperity is shared among equals. On the tactical displays visible to Elena, the last hegemony strongholds were surrendering to human forces. The biological weapon ships that had been heading toward Earth had been intercepted, and their crews taken into custody. Across 17 sectors, prison worlds that had held millions of enslaved beings were being liberated by human forces working alongside local resistance movements. "We know that many of you are afraid," Elena acknowledged. "You have seen one power structure collapse and another take its place, and you wonder whether humanity will prove to be just another set of masters wearing different masks. I cannot give you absolute assurance about our motives. No species should trust another species that completely, but I can show you our actions." The display screens throughout the galaxy began showing footage from the liberated worlds. Human soldiers helping former slaves reunite with families they had been separated from for decades. Human engineers working alongside local technicians to repair infrastructure damaged by hegemony exploitation. Human doctors treating beings who have been subjected to biological experiments. In the past 6 hours, human forces have liberated 247 prison worlds, freed over 50 million enslaved beings, and captured the leaders responsible for genocide against 18 different species. We have done this not because we seek to rule you, but because we believe that freedom is a birthright of every sentient being in the galaxy. Elena paused, allowing the weight of those numbers to sink in across the listening worlds. Behind her, she could hear a representative from the liberated species quietly weeping as they saw their people free for the first time in generations. But liberation is only the first step, Elena continued. The harder task is building something better to replace what we have torn down. Humanity proposes a creation of a new galactic organization, one based on a radical idea that every species has a right to determine its own destiny. The proposed charter for the Galactic Freedom Alliance appeared on screens throughout the galaxy. Its principles were simple but revolutionary: voluntary membership, democratic decision-making, protection of individual rights, and the absolute prohibition of slavery or genocide in any form. We call this a Galactic Freedom Alliance, and membership is entirely voluntary. No species will be compelled to join, no world will be forced to adopt our values, and no civilization will be required to change its internal structure. The only requirement for membership is a commitment to the same principles of freedom that we offer to you. Elena could see the real-time data showing how different worlds were responding to the proposal. The former victims of council oppression were requesting immediate membership. Several major civilizations were declaring their neutrality while they evaluated the new situation. A few species, those that had benefited from the old system of exploitation, were organizing resistance. To those species that profited from the Council's crimes, we offer redemption through truth and reparation. To those that were complicit in genocide and slavery, we offer justice through fair trial and proportional consequences. To those that choose to continue the cycle of oppression and exploitation, we offer only this warning: humanity has spent 30 years preparing for this moment, and we will not allow the galaxy to return to the darkness you created. Admiral Chen stepped forward and handed Elena a datapad showing the latest intelligence reports. 3 hegemony survivor factions were attempting to rally support for a counterattack, but their potential allies were melting away as more evidence of council crime spread throughout the galaxy. The age of the Galaxy Council is over, Elena declared. The age of the Galactic Freedom Alliance begins now. To every being listening to these words, regardless of your species or your world or your history, we extend an invitation to join us in building a civilization worthy of the stars we travel among. As Elena stepped back from the communication array, she felt a profound sense of completion. The diplomatic career that had begun with hope for peaceful cooperation had ended with the destruction of false peace and the birth of something genuinely new. President Morrison approached her with a communication pad. Elena, we're receiving responses from across the galaxy. 312 species have requested immediate membership in the Alliance. 47 others are requesting observer status while they prepare for full membership. And there's something else. We're detecting signal from outside the galaxy. It seems our little revelation has attracted attention from civilizations we didn't even know existed. Elena smiled for the first time in days. Mr. President, I think humanity is about to discover that the galaxy was just the beginning of our journey. 6 months later, Elena stood in the same chamber where she had watched humanity reveal its true capabilities to the galaxy. But now the holographic display showed something far more hopeful than military positions and tactical assessments. They showed the first meeting of the Galactic Freedom Alliance General Assembly, with representatives from over 400 species gathered not in the sterile chambers of the old council station, but in a new facility built cooperatively by dozens of civilizations working together. The Drakmari delegate who had first stood with Earth now served as the Alliance's military coordinator, working alongside human officers to protect worlds still threatened by hegemony remnants. The Altarian Confederacy had become the Alliance's center for scientific research, their crystalline cities hosting laboratories where species that had been enemies for centuries now collaborated on projects that benefited all. Elena's new title was Director of Interspecies Relations, but the role felt more like teaching than governing. Every day brought new challenges as species that had never experienced real freedom learned how to exercise it responsibly. Some struggled with the concept of individual rights. Others had difficulty understanding that cooperation didn't require submission to authority. But they were learning, and more importantly, they were thriving. Director, Marcus Chen said as he approached with the day's reports. He had adapted well to the new reality, though he still occasionally slipped into old diplomatic protocols. We've received a formal communication from the Andromedans. They are requesting permission to establish an embassy within Alliance Base. Elena felt a thrill of excitement. The signals from outside the galaxy had indeed come from advanced civilizations that had been watching the Milky Way for millennia, waiting for its inhabitants to mature enough for contact. The Andromedans were the first to reach out, but they wouldn't be the last. Schedule a meeting for next week, Elena replied. And Marcus, make sure we're honest about our capabilities this time. No more hiding what we are. As she looked out at the stars through the chamber's viewing port, Elena reflected on the journey that had brought humanity to this point. The little girl who had dreamed of exploring the galaxy could never have imagined that the exploration would begin with tearing down an empire built on lies, and ending with an invitation to join a community of galaxies. The universe, it turned out, was far larger and more wonderful than any of them had dared to hope. And humanity, in choosing to fight for freedom rather than accept comfortable slavery, had earned their place among the stars not as conquerors or subjects, but as a species that had reminded the galaxy what it truly meant to be free. The chaos that had swept the stars when Earth severed ties with the Galaxy Council had indeed changed everything. But from that chaos had emerged something unprecedented in galactic history, a civilization built not on the rule of the strong over the weak, but on the radical idea that every sentient being deserved the chance to reach for the stars and grasp them with their own hands. Elena smiled as she watched ships from 100 different worlds moving through the space lanes, their crews working together not because they had to, but because they chose to. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly how it should be.